Well, Sunderland are back in the Premier League, but let's take a look back at their journey to making it back to the top flight. In 2017, they finished last in the Prem and were relegated after 10 seasons. Then in 2018, things got even worse for them. They were relegated in back-to-back seasons after finishing last in the Championship. And after 4 seasons in League One, they were promoted back to the Championship in 2022 with a win over Wycombe in the playoff final. And in 2023, they finished 6th in the Championship, but they didn't earn promotion then after losing to Luton in the playoff semi-finals. But 2 years later, in May of this year, they were finally able to say that they're headed back to the Premier League after an 8-year absence. And they were able to do that with a win over Sheffield United in the Championship playoff final. What did you see in that game that makes you think that they could be successful in the Prem this year?
It's a good question, Claudia. I would say Régis Bris is how can I put it, a quite scholarly type manager. You know, he's not particularly close to his players. He's not aloof, but, you know, when it was put to him, he doesn't have the experience of managing in the Championship, for instance. He said, well, maybe that's an advantage because I see things differently and I see things afresh. So that's one way of looking at it. And also the way he has a structure, the way his team plays, he says, you know, he believes in the way they play and he doesn't go too far from it. So if they're getting beat or there's a problem, you know, stick to the game plan. That was very much the case against Coventry City in the semi-finals, where again, you know, they were without possession of the ball for a long, long time, yet they still managed to come through as well. So I think he's somebody who I would describe him as very methodical, as somebody who has a plan, has a vision, and he gets his players to buy into that as well. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, he's got a lot of young players, and it's a lot easier when you've got young players to get them to buy in as opposed to senior players who've kind of, if you like, been there, seen it and done it.
Geoff, for maybe our viewers who don't understand Sunderland and the enormity of this club, right? We have the Sunderland Till You Die documentary that over here in the States, and we saw them get relegated twice. But this is a massive club. This is a big club, actually, with a big stadium, a great derby with Newcastle. I mean, there's so many things. This is I'll say in air quotes, like this is a true Premier League club that's not been in the Premier League for 8 years.
Yeah, you're spot on, Tony. In fact, a lot of Newcastle United fans were saying, although they are their fiercest rivals, they absolutely detest each other. There's no question about that. A lot of Newcastle United fans were delighted that Sunderland got promoted because they want the derby. They miss that Tyne-Wear derby. They can't wait for that. I guarantee you both sets of clubs will be looking at the fixture list, and that's the first game that they will look for. Yeah, they are a huge club. 45,000 the Stadium of Light can take. They had the highest attendance in the Championship last season, and that's comfortably bigger than some Premier League clubs as well. So huge, huge club. Historically, they've won trophies, famously the FA Cup. I haven't won the top division title since I think it was about the 1930s. But they are a club of pedigree and a club of history, although, to your point, of late, they haven't been a successful Premier League club. Can that change now? The odds are against them, as we've seen, the recent pattern of, you know, the promoted sides going straight back down. But they're going to give it a go. And I think that's part of the wonderful journey that their fans are on. And that is part of why we all love this beautiful game.
So, Geoff, you touched on it earlier. This was the youngest team in the Championship last year, right? They rode towards the top of the table until they had a slip off about 3/4 of the way, finished 24 points off of Leeds and Burnley in the end. So you have to make some changes. They have, with the Granit Xhaka move now, spent the most money of any promoted team over the last 3 years. How does that sort of equate to success or not being successful?
Look, Tony, you're quite right with those statistics in terms of how their season, if you like, tailed off. But what you have to almost remember is they kind of knew they were in the playoffs. So they took their foot off the gas a little bit. They were almost preparing for the playoffs. They knew they couldn't catch the 2 teams ahead of them. They weren't going to catch Burnley and they weren't going to catch Leeds. So it was Sheffield United, actually, who really fell away in the Championship. But Sunderland were in that kind of limbo where they knew they would be involved in the playoffs at the end of the season. And I think that, like, you've been a player yourself, when you know you're relatively safe, so to speak, your game doesn't have the same edge. It doesn't have that competitiveness. So I think that's the reason for that. Now, Granit Xhaka. I think this is a really, really interesting signing because this goes against everything that Sunderland have done in terms of their strategy. They buy young. You look at the other players they've bought this season so far. Diarra, Siddiqui, Tabli. You've got, of course, Dingra from Brighton as well. All young players. And now they sign a 32-year-old Granit Xhaka. So you say, why? What are they looking to buy there? Why this departure? He brings two things. Huge amount. Look at all those youngsters there. He brings, I mean, Enzo Lefebvre was already there, so they made his transfer permanent. So he's a player they know. But these are all players of promise, players potentially that could be sold on, a la Joe Bellingham. Similar type, not similar players, but potentially there's sell-on value in these players. Xhaka is the complete opposite. There's not going to be much sell-on value, if indeed any, with him. I think he brings two things. He brings experience, of course. 225 Premier League games for Arsenal. So he brings that, number one. He also is the Swiss captain, and he brings a maturity and he brings leadership as well. So that's why I think that he all-round package is interesting for them in him. It's not just his experience. I think that's too easy to say. It's also the type of leadership that he brings. So that's why he's an important signing for them. And he will be very much the coach's voice on the pitch. He's going to bring know-how. He's going to bring, not devilment, but, he's a tough guy, Granit Xhaka. He knows exactly what it takes. He knows how to do the dirty work and how to dig in. And he will lift the players around him and he'll get them, if you like. They've got to grow up quickly because it's a huge step from the Championship to the Premier League. You can't pretend otherwise. It is a million miles apart. The pace of the game, the physicality, the skill level, you name it, it's a huge challenge for these players. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be done. Other clubs have done it. Other clubs have got up and survived. Look at a club like Bournemouth, who were nowhere near the Premier League for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're back, and now they're fairly comfortable in the Premier League. But Granit Xhaka, he will bring all of that knowledge, a wealth of experience, and that can only be a good thing for the club.
Geoff, knowing that Xhaka has over 200 Premier League appearances versus the rest of the team who only have 85 Premier League appearances, does that concern you? Or do you feel like having a guy like Xhaka will be able to kind of help alleviate that and be able to help the team a little bit as they head into this new season?
Yeah, Claudia, to your point, he can't give his appearances to them, but he can give them the benefit of his experience, and he can guide them as well in terms of what they need to be doing and how their behaviours need to adapt for Premier League football. Look, let's not pretend they can't do it. These are good footballers. Championship is a very, very good level indeed. So it's that passing that on, and I think that would have been a key part of the talks to say, look, you're not just coming here to play. You're not just coming here to try and help us stay up. We need you to come here to lead by example and to show this young group of players the way. And at 32 as well, he's not that old, He's not somebody who's ever relied on pace in his career, so I don't see that being an issue. It's now all about how much he can pass that on. But I would expect him to play a really important part in Sunderland's Premier League campaign.
Geoff, I did a quick search on the early schedule. West Ham at Burnley, Brentford at home, at Crystal Palace, Villa, and then at Nottingham Forest. Régis Bris, what does he have to do here in this first 2 months? Because it's not the gauntlet. There's not shock and awe. There's good teams in there, but it's not City, Liverpool. It's not that type of schedule. And then how much of a leash does he get with this group? Because he is we talked about it last year here in studio, right? He is a bright manager, a young manager, but it's all about winning in the end.
Yeah, I think he's got to dig in, Tony. It's as simple as that. What they can't afford to do is to get hammered in the first 3 or 4 games because, again, you know yourself, it's all about confidence, as any top-level sport is. So I think they will look at that fixture list there. They won't be saying, whoa, this is easy. Of course not. But I think they'll be relieved. There's no games there. Those are all winnable games. Villa is the toughest game. There's no question about that. Villa is the toughest game. But look, West Ham, funny enough, I think could struggle. I also think Brentford could struggle this season. That's why I don't automatically think that the 3 clubs that came up will, as in the previous 2 seasons, be the 3 clubs that go back down. West Ham, very inactive in the transfer window so far. Long way to go. I know that. It's still a settling-in period for Graham Potter. Brentford, big changes. Huge change in the coach and the coaching staff, because Thomas Frank took his coaching staff with him. And you've seen 2, and if you include Ivan Toney, 3 big players leave the club. So I think this is a really difficult season for Brentford, and they've got to hit the ground running. They've got to find their feet very quickly. So, yeah, I think Sunderland will look at that and say, we can have a go here. We can absolutely have a go. And we've got to start where you don't ease into a Premier League season. It is so unforgiving. The microscope is upon you. But if they can start in a solid, pragmatic fashion, that would be a good start to the campaign. And again, let's be honest. If you offered Sunderland fans the chance to finish 17th right now, they'd say, yes, please, where do I sign?